Welcome back and happy Bathurst week, all race fans, wherever you are around the country and indeed around the world, because it is that time of year once again where the eyes of the Australian sporting world turn to Mount Panorama for 161 laps of what is quite possibly the greatest racetrack in the Southern Hemisphere and indeed perhaps the world as well. 52 drivers across 26 cars will tackle Mount Panorama for their shot at Australian sporting history and their place in the annals of Mount Panorama history as well. I am Zach Dowdle, and joining me on this special edition of the Pitlane Punters podcast, where we look ahead to the 2024 Repco Bathurst 1000, is Joshua Grock and Anthony Lewsome. As always, good afternoon, boys, as we record this a little bit early this week, Monday afternoon recording for us as we are sitting in front of our computers in different parts of the world. October 7. Bags are all beginning to be packed. Road trip to Bathurst, not too far away, boys.
Yeah, it's looking fantastic, and all three of us will be a part of the team this weekend. Obviously, Anthony for his crew with Airtime Media, you Zach reporting for Supercars, and I'll be there with Channel 7 for the broadcast too. Really exciting stuff, and hey, it's probably one of the best road trips of the year, I would say.
Pack your bags, get in the car. Head 3 hours west from Sydney for me. Oh boy, I can't wait for tomorrow morning. It's going to be fantastic. I'll arrive about lunchtime and might do a lap just as a walk, just because I can, and soak it all in, or I might just go straight to my accommodation and prepare my food for the week. I don't know yet, but it's going to be a great week nevertheless, and I can't wait to get involved for our second year annual road trip that the three of us get to do. So maybe the second of many.
Well, it's nice that Anthony's already jumped the gun with the annual road trip call, even if it's only our second one going as a trio. But hey, you said it, Anthony, not me. So no, it's going to be a big weekend at Mount Panorama, and it's all sort of building nicely, I think, for this year. We've got a three-way title fight at the moment, of course, between Will Brown, Chaz Mostert, and Brock Feeney. Will Brown getting the upper hand a little bit last time out at Sandown off the back of, a quite sensational Sandown 500 victory it was alongside Scott Pye. But there's 23 other cars and entries in the race outside of the Championship 3, I guess you can call them. And there are a lot of combinations who are shaping up to be, they can definitely pull off a big result at Mount Panorama. Definitely some of those combinations probably say are among the outright favourites, but definitely a lot of Smokeys as well, boys, aren't there?
100%. I know we'll be talking about them a little bit later on in the show. I don't want to give away who mine is straight away. A little bit left field, I think, some of them, but some of them not. Like, I think it's been well reported that there's quite a lot of cars that are capable of winning this race, quite a lot of teams that are up to the challenge. I think it's probably one of the most competitive fields we've had in a long time, and I think Gen 3's got a lot to answer for that, and especially everyone coming to terms with it. Obviously, there's a bit of a question mark over the Ford engines. I mean, it was a bit last year. Wasn't great, and it probably kind of took the sheen off a little bit of the first Gen 3 go around the mountain. And this time there's that crankshaft issue. We had a few failures coming out of Sandown, which are supposed to be fixed, and we're hoping that they're fixed. But that's probably the only thing that's hanging up over the head of this one. But there's a lot of great teams. Groves come to mind, even Premier, a bit of a smoky too. I mean, of course, then there's the main one, 888, Tickford, Walkinshaw. That's almost half the grid capable of winning.
I can confirm the Ford crankshaft issues, they will be fixed. Brand new specification crankshafts pulled straight from the GT3 Ford Mustang that debuted earlier this season. They have been quickly homologated as I guess you can say, an emergency measure from Supercars, and all of the Ford teams will have those new crankshafts for the Bathurst 1000. Only question mark is when the teams will receive those crankshafts. Sounds like they're not all going to be at the track for first practice, but all the teams should have them for the race. So that's going to be interesting to see how that gets rolled out. But before we get bogged down in too much of that, we've got 26 cars and 52 drivers to talk about, boys. So why don't we dive straight into that, because there is a lot to talk about, as we said, and we'll go in reverse teams championship order, which of course leaves us with our two wildcard entries, first of all. And we're going to start off with quite possibly one of the most popular teams on the grid, despite the fact that this is only their third championship start in the Repco Supercars Championship. I am, of course, talking about Matt Charter Motorsport, based out of Albury, the family-run team, Matt Charter and Brad Vaughan in their ex-888 Chevrolet Camaro, and they did a really solid job at the Sandown 500. They finished on the lead lap. I think Brad Vaughan did a 90-lap stint in the middle of the race, which was a mega effort, and he more than held his own amongst some pretty good names as well. Matt Charter, likewise, in his second career start. Second attempt at Mount Panorama for the Matt Charter Motorsport team. They were in the 1000 in 2022 in an ex-Walkinshaw Holden ZB Commodore with Matt Charter and Jalen Robotham, and I believe that was also a lead lap finish for them as well. So it's going to be really interesting to see how these guys go. Brad Vaughan, of course, last time out, he was a race winner in Super 2 in his Tickford Mustang. So a very good young talent there in Brad Vaughan, highly rated by many. How do we think these guys are going to go, boys?
I think why this team is so popular, I think it encapsulates the aura of the Bathurst 1000 when you think of the privateers and all the years gone by, and some of those classic fans that went up there in the 60s, 70s, and 80s that are still around. And they encapsulate that family, full privateer run team. I think they've got the right equipment this time. No one can really question the equipment. I'm pretty sure that was a multiple race winner last year out. I can't remember if it was Shane's or Feeney's car, but either way, it won races, so it's good enough to get the job done, and they've purchased that vehicle, so they're coming at it quite seriously. There's a lot of interesting names that are a part of the technical lineup, so they're not here to do it by halves. It's worth mentioning as well, Zach, you talked about at Sandown, they were probably the straightest car at the end of the day. Not a scratch on the Boost Mobile Camaro. So, look, I don't see them winning the thing, but if they keep it clean, I definitely can see, and keep out of trouble, I can see a top 10 on the cards for sure.
Yeah, top 10, I don't think they can go that far. I think there's a lot of other pairings that could be up there, but I definitely think for them, their goal, I know, is to finish on the lead lap, and I think if they can do that, I dare say they'll probably end up inside the top 15 and have a nice clean race. But we know what the mountain's like, and back on the hard tyre this year, as opposed to the soft tyre that we saw last year, and a race record distance of green flag running to the end of the race from lap 78 onwards last year. So I don't think that'll be the case this year. Going back to the hard tyre with some less deg, hopefully that produces less marbles and we get more attacking racing as opposed to one-line tram tracks that we saw last year, almost like the wet weather line.
One thing I'm curious about with this car, who do we think is going to qualify? Obviously, Matt Charter qualified the car at Sandown, but I think a lot of people, I think it's fairly safe to say Brad Vaughan perhaps is the faster of the two drivers. Do we think Brad gets the nod on Friday afternoon for the 40-minute qualifying session in that car?
I think it'll depend on how well he does in his Super 2 qualifying session. I think that'll happen early on Friday morning. So that might give the Matt Charter Motorsport team the look and insight into how he's going performance-wise for that, and then make a decision from there. Also then counting, or as a counter to that point, the Super 2 race directly precedes the Supercars qualifying session. So is there then the likelihood of a mistake in qualifying because you're trying to push too hard and you're fatigued having just come out of doing a 100K race around Bathurst in a Super 2 car? I don't know. There's people that get paid a lot more than I do to make those decisions in the team, and I guess we'll just have to wait and see.
Whose name is on the team? I think that answers your question. That's what I reckon.
Oh, you sound like someone who very much was rejected to take over their Super 2 car this weekend. That is a joke, by the way. Josh did not put his name forward, that we're aware of. But on the topic of double duties, quite a good segue into the next car that we're going to talk about, and it is the team that Matt Charter Motorsport is sharing a garage with, and pretty handy team to be sharing a garage with in the 888 wildcard entry of Craig Lowndes and Cooper Murray. Cooper Murray stepping back from his Super 2 duties this weekend to focus solely on his main game ambitions, I guess you can call it, with Craig Lowndes. And of course, a lot of people are talking about this team as one to watch as a potential dark horse and, dare I say it, a wild card for a really strong result. Craig Lowndes, 7-time Bathurst winner. It's his 31st Bathurst start this weekend, believe it or not, after making his debut way back in 1994. Saw a crazy post put up by Supercars on social media today that since Craig Lowndes made his Bathurst debut, I think Australia's had 8 prime ministers or something ridiculous like that. I mean,
8 prime ministers. The Panthers have won 4 straight grand finals, and the AFL's had 14 different grand final winners.
Well, I mean, the Penrith 4-peat, that's, I mean, you could say that's happened since a lot of drivers have made their Bathurst debut. But anyway, I digress. I mean, what do you boys think about this combination? Let's not forget, they finished 5th at Sandown, ahead of Cam Waters, ahead of Chaz Mostert, ahead of a lot of highly regarded drivers who are among the best of the best in the game. And let's not forget, it was Cooper who held off these guys as well at the end of the race.
Is Craig Lowndes the new Jim Richards?
Or do we dare say he's the new Peter Brock?
Nah, it's hard. You can't compare across those sort of eras. Jim Richards at least was a bit closer.
Yeah. The thing is that this era is undoubtedly the most competitive era there's been in touring car racing in the country. I mean, let's not forget, Peter Brock and Jim Richards once won Bathurst by 6 laps.
No
way would that happen. If that did happen in today's age, then it would have to be something that completely makes 2014 just look inconsequential in terms of craziness. But yeah, look, we know that Lowndes is going to do a job, right? It's just Craig Lowndes at Bathurst, and yes, it is a lot of pressure on Cooper Murray, but we've seen that his main game performances of this season, they've probably been a lot more impressive and mature than his Super 2 performances. And, you know, how much of that is down to, I guess, the driver experience and the decision-making across or compared from one category to the other, from young guys to established world-class talent. Yeah, certainly very interesting to see how Cooper goes. I think the decision for him to step back from Super 2 this weekend, I think that's going to help out that wildcard entry as well.
I think it's a good move.
And, you know, it takes some of that pressure off Cooper, is that, you know, when you're in Super 2 and you're driving next to Craig Lowndes, you know, people know there's talent there and they sort of expect results. And this year has been a bit of a disaster for Cooper, unfortunately, in Super 2. But in saying that, he already has his main game promotion secured for next year with Erebus, and he's not in a championship fight, so he could afford to jump out of Super 2 for the round. And yeah, really, really interested to see how this combination goes.
And I think it'll also be a bit of redemption for Craig Lowndes after last year in the wildcard operation with Zane Goddard. They were forced into the lane and fixing the gear shift tower after only 17 laps, so they were really not afforded a real crack at last year's race properly. And of course, we then saw it happen to Brock Feeney and Jamie Whincup later in the race when they were in quite a crucial position. But yeah, for that wild card run by Triple Eight, they're a world-class operation, and I have no doubt that they will live up to that expectation once again as they did at Sandown.
So the list I'm looking at here, Cooper Murray is the primary driver. Is that right?
I believe Craig Lowndes is the primary driver.
I thought that was the case. So this list is a little bit off because I thought the Lowndes name on the car would be more important than the Murray name, but I'm assuming Murray will be qualifying the car.
He did qualified the car.
Yes, and I think the sole reason Lowndes is in the car is that he can start the race. Oh, that's the sole reason he's listed as the primary driver, because of course, new rule this year, primary drivers have to start the race. Yeah, which takes out one element of strategy, but then again, we saw at Sandown, it kind of added in a new element in that it was sort of a co-driver sprint within a 500-kilometre race that sort of saw a lot of highly fancied runners fall out of the running through little mistakes. So, yeah, you'd imagine he will qualify the car. I've seen some people call for Lowndesy to qualify the car to sort of take some of the pressure off of Cooper.
That doesn't give him experience going into next year, though.
Exactly right. And that's what the aim of this wildcard program is. It is to blood young talent and, let Craig Lowndes mentor these young guys, sort of like Peter Brock did for him way back when he was emerging into the sport back in the early to mid 90s.
And let Super Chief sell the merch.
Exactly right. Yes. And I mean, it also a pretty handy name to be associated with for Super Chief as well, you've got to say. Now, a lot of people say that a top 10 for a wild card is a great result. Would a top 10 be exceeding expectations, or do we think a top 10 is the expectation for this team this year?
I think it is the expectation following what they did at Sandown, and that was inside the top 5. I think anything less than sort of a 7th or 8th maybe for them might be the way they go. Expectation-wise, I think they've definitely shown that they can perform to the highest standard, and to have that backing, of course, with 888, they get all the data that cars 88 and 87 get, and so they can work with the team as a whole. And I wouldn't be surprised if we potentially saw all 3 cars right up the front, potentially battling it out for a podium.
100% agree.
No, I'm absolutely with you on that as well. I think quite rightly they're being discussed as a dark horse entry by many within the paddock. Right, on to our full-time entries now. We're going to start off with the team that is currently 12th in the team's championship, and that is the second half of Brad Jones Racing, cars 12, or in this case, car 50 and car 96. Jackson Evans and Dean Fiore pairing up in the SCT Logistics Camaro. Macaulay Jones and Jordan Boys making up the awesome Albury combination in the Pizza Hut Camaro, which is going to have new livery this weekend. So keep an eye out for that one. I don't think there's exactly too much to talk about here with this team, boys. Not exactly expecting them to be in the fight for a top 10, shall we say, unless things happen around them.
I think you're pretty spot on. It is worth noting, I'm pretty sure Jackson Evans has got a new number for this weekend. Is that right? Number 50?
Yep, number 50, celebrating 50 years of SCT Logistics and keeping the red livery from Sandown.
Yeah, which will be exciting. Look, if these guys can keep out of trouble, that'll be the best, and the cars are clean and straight. I think, and on the lead lap, I think they're going to be on the lead lap anyway. The cars are all that close these days in safety cars, but yeah, I think a top 10 would be an excellent day for any of these 2 cars.
Yeah, I agree. We saw a couple of years back, BJR didn't have the greatest runs with their 4 cars at the mountain, and I think they'll be looking to try and rectify that this year and try and have all 4 of their cars finish, especially even better for them if they finish on the lead lap.
Also worth mentioning as well, Jackson Evans finished second at the Bathurst 12-hour at the start of the year in a Phantom Global Racing Porsche. Was a bit of a standout on that day as well, Jackson Evans. That car came through from deep in the pack in the early stages to become a legitimate front runner on a day where really no one could beat the anti-EMA Porsche of Matt Campbell. So Jackson knows what he's doing around Mount Panorama, but again, probably not the machinery for him to showcase his talents. And it is his first season as a full-timer in the game, but 2 previous Bathurst 1000 starts for the Kiwi. So he has the most.
He's got Dean Fiore with him as well, which is a seasoned co-driver
who is rock solid, and that experience might be a bit handy, sort of like Richie Stanaway, how Bathurst is sort of where he's the most experienced as a full-timer, but we'll touch on Richie soon when we get to Grove Racing. Blanchard Racing Team, they're next in the order, cars 3 and 7. The Cool Drive Mustang, it's Aaron Squared, Love and Cameron, and James Courtney, I should say, and Jack Perkins in the Snowy River Caravans Mustang. I think it's a sort of similar story to the BJR, two BJR cars we just spoke of there. Sort of, they're there, but not really sure where they're going to shake out in the grander scheme of things in terms of fighting for a win and a podium.
Yeah, this team hasn't had a great year this year either. I'm pretty sure, I can't remember which race it was, but it was one of my lock predictions that one of the cars would get knocked out in Q3. I think that was in Tasmania from memory, and that one come through. So they haven't had a great year. The James Courtney, Jack Perkins driver lineup is solid. I just don't know if the machinery is going to be good enough at Bathurst. But again, I think same expectations for the second BGR team. If either of these cars get in the top 10, I think they've had an excellent day. And if they're straight.
You got to take yourself off mute, Anthony.
The mute king. Done it again. Anthony, the mute king.
I've done it again. Dear oh dear.
McCain.
He's done it again.
Dear oh dear.
Your thoughts, Anthony?
What I was saying, and I'll repeat myself again, the Aaron Love wildcard that he ran with Blanchard Racing Team last year, that finished on the lead lap and relatively clean. So I think if he can have a similar performance to that this year, I think they'll take that as a win.
I remember Aaron Love having a particularly tough start to the season this year at Mount Panorama as well, at Bathurst 500, where I believe he might have fenced a thing twice in the same race as well.
At the same spot.
At the same spot. So
and he didn't have a good Super 2 season last year at Bathurst either, from memory.
Well, Friday was
quick.
Friday was very good. He won. Saturday qualifying less good. Just about wrote the car off. Look, he's fast. And I've said this before on this podcast, like, the kid's got a lot of talent, but he's been thrown into a really tough situation with an expanding Blanchard team that, they're still trying to find their feet as a two-car operation. And James Courtney's a great teammate to have, but when you yourself don't have that experience, very tough situation to find yourself in an emerging team. Also worth noting, Aaron Cameron doing double duties with his Super 2 commitments at Kelly Racing, where he's third in the championship as well. So another one to watch there, Aaron Cameron, particularly in Super 2, might be in for a good weekend, I think, in a somewhat reduced field this weekend in Super 2. Now we're going to move on to potentially one of our first dark horse teams in this Bathurst 1000 for 2024, and it's Erebus Motorsport, who, believe it or not, are all the way down in 10th in the teams championship. Yes, this is the Erebus Motorsport that won the teams championship last year. How things can change within 12 months in motorsport. Car 1, Todd Hazelwood and Brody Kostecki, the reigning Supercars champion, in the Chico Roll Chevrolet Camaro, which is already making me hungry. And Jack LeBrock and Jaden Ojeda in the Tyre Power Camaro, car number 9. Jaden Ojeda, who is currently on his way back home from the United States of America, where he was just competing in the Indianapolis 8-hour with Kenny Habul, two-time Bathurst 12-hour winner, in the final round of the Intercontinental GT Challenge. Now, boys, very tough season for Erebus this year, but it can definitely all change and be all very easily forgotten. The on-track stuff, perhaps not some of the off-track stuff, with a Bathurst 1000 win. Can Erebus challenge for a victory with either of these cars?
I think the number 1 car's in with a shout. Hazelwood, well, for the first half of the season, for the first couple of rounds, was arguably the best Erebus driver. And I took Brody Kostecki quite a few rounds to beat his points in the championship, to pass him after he took the seat back. So with Brody and Todd in that number 1 Camaro, I can see that being a competitive car, because they've had flashes of speed during the year. This team hasn't forgotten how to set a car up and run an operation and to drive, right? Like, these guys, this is the championship winning team last year. Jack LeBrock has shown some great flashes of speed as well. I think the cars are good. I think if they can put everything together, and Jaden Ojeda as well, a great co-driver, if they can put it all together, I think this team, if this team doesn't get a car in the top 10, it's been a bad day.
I agree. They showed at Sandown just recently that, especially the car 1 side of the garage, they're up there fighting for a a podium position at one point, and then Todd Hazelwood came together with Jamie Whincup at turn 4, and it led to Todd having the deflated right front as he put his foot in the brake pedal going into turn 6 at Dandenong Road. So it was tough luck there for Erebus with car 1 at Sandown, but I'm sure they'll be willing or wanting rather to bounce back. And Brodie had pace at Bathurst last year, as did Todd. So I think they will be looking forward to having a great weekend rather.
If they can execute, then they will be a very strong pairing.
Brodie Kostecki and Todd Hazelwood, they're my dark horse pick for the Bathurst 1000 this year.
They're on my list too.
They are my dark horse pick. I can't back away from it now because it's going to be on a podcast. It's also going to be written in Word on a website.
Just supercars.com, nothing big, mate.
No. I'll try to be humble. I think my big question is if the car can hold together for 161 laps, because we've seen Erebus cars have a lot of weird little gremlins this year. And I don't know if that's a team thing or if it's just plain bad luck and they've smashed a mirror, run over a black cat and walked under a ladder simultaneously. But for some reason, I don't know, there's been some sort of, Erebus just haven't quite seemed to be the same. But in saying that, Brodie seems hell-bent on getting a Bathurst win before he walks out at the end of the year and joins Dick Johnson Racing next year. And Brodie sort of strikes me as that person, when he says he's going to do something, he's going to give it a red-hot go. And if it doesn't come off, then so be it. But he's going to put everything towards it. And I think that combined with Todd Hazelwood getting 500 racing kilometres at Mount Panorama in an Erebus Camaro under his belt at the start of the year, I reckon that's going to have a lot to answer for as well. And I also think that LeBrock and Ojeda are going to be a great pairing as well. Ojeda is incredibly match fit, and Mercedes AMG are full of praise for him in their GT world, and that's a very, very good team to be a part of in global motor racing. So I think Erebus definitely could be one to watch, and they're not going to want to be stuck at the back end of pit lane for much longer. They're going to want to move their way forward in the final 3 events of the year. So I think there could be a little bit of a fire lit underneath Erebus Motorsport this weekend.
100% agree. 100% agree. And I forgot to consider the Todd Hazelwood 500Ks at Bathurst this year, which is probably more evidence why we all think that they're a bit of a dark horse and, we should be on for a good run.
Absolutely.
So now that we've spoken about Erebus, second half of Brad Jones Racing, the A team, I guess we can call them. Car 8, Andre Heimgartner, Declan Fraser, showed a lot of speed at Sandown, but strategy sort of fell away from them a little bit. 14 car as well, Bryce Fullwood and friend of the show, Jalen Robotham. I guess we can call him a friend of the show. We've had him on before. Finished 8th at the Sandown 500, having stormed through from, I think it was 22nd on the grid.
Biggest mover at Sandown.
And Bryce Fullwood sort of establishing a bit of a reputation as a rock-solid enduro performer. I think since 2021 at Bathurst, he's been in the top 10 at every single enduro since then, which is quite a handy stat given he's been, it was at Walkinshaw and Drury United for Bathurst 2021, and then Brad Jones Racing ever since then. Putting together a very decent enduro resume is Bryce Fullwood.
100% recent podium as well in Tasmania.
Yeah,
he's been riding on. He's on form. And I think this is another case of the Brad Jones Racing cars. They're not bad, especially the A team, the first 2 cars. It's all down to execution and keeping out of trouble. And I mean, that's the name of the game for Bathurst, but especially for these guys. I don't think they'll have the outright pace, but a Brad Jones Racing car ever since the early 2000s has been strong at Bathurst. And I think we'll get at least the 8 will be strong as well.
Well, I've got the 8 as my Smoky of Andre Heimgartner and Declan Fraser. And I think so long as they don't have the Conrod issue they had going down Conrod Straight last year, where it literally punched a hole through the bottom of the engine, I think they're going to be in for a good shot. It was unfortunate luck for them last year, but I think they still had the pace to have a decent result inside the top 10 for car 8. But I think they're due some luck this year. And obviously Andre's already got a win earlier in the year over in his home country of New Zealand. And I think they would be a good shout for a podium this weekend.
And I've been shopping a bit at Middies at the moment, and there's some great lads that work for Middies, so go the Middies car.
Well, I mean, that podium for Bryce Ford, it sort of signalled the start of the turnaround for Brad Jones Racing, didn't it? And back then at Tasmania, Brad Jones seemed a lot more confident about their Bathurst prospects than their Sandown prospects. But in saying that, Andre Heimgartner and Declan Fraser were plenty quick at Sandown. So if Sandown was meant to be their bad round, then I'll tell you what, that 8 car definitely could be one to watch at Bathurst. And Declan Fraser seemed hungry at Bathurst as well, at Sandown rather, seemed very eager to prove a point, having had a pretty torrid season in the 4th car at Tickford last year and sort of being left high and dry without a ride in supercars this year. But saying that, he's been doing great things in GT World Challenge Australia with Triple Eight and their Mercedes. I think Andre will just be glad to finish at Bathurst, especially given the last 2 years where
I think Zane, he got involved in the St. Goddard accident a few years back.
Yep, yeah, and I think Jalen Robotham's just going to be glad to complete a Bathurst with a car that has a clutch after last year's efforts with no clutch for the entire race with Cam Hill and the MSR Camaro. So
let's just say if the Peter Brock Trophy makes it back to Albury, it'll be the biggest thing since the railroad got there.
I'm guessing that was quite big.
A long time ago too. And obviously Brad Jones had some quick cars over the years. The AUs, the BAs. Well, Falcons that are. So I'm sure it'd be very good if he managed to get one home.
Well, a lot of people forget that Brad Jones was the co-driver of the 015 Commodore that Craig Lowndes made famous in 1994. That car that finished second. And a lot of people forget that Brad Jones sort of got them into that position sort of from the clouds after Lowndes had a bit of a moment early in the race, and I think they dropped just about a lap, and Bradley made that all back up on pace, and of course had success with the Audis as well in the Super Touring era. So definitely very hungry is Brad Jones for a Bathurst win, and you can definitely picture a world where that happens this year. I'm not saying they're the favourite by any means, but definitely that 8 car for sure. I think that's definitely got the potential to throw the cat amongst the pigeons of the front runners as well. And
it wouldn't be unpopular either.
It definitely would not be unpopular, especially a Kiwi winning at Bathurst in Brad Jones Racing number 8, given Jason Richards' heroics in the late stages of 2009 as well to get that BOC Commodore up into second. So I think they're definitely one to watch, and also the 14 car as well. They're probably just going to chip away at it all weekend, and I reckon they can finish in the top 10 as well. Another team that has a little bit of potential, I think, Team 18. They're the next team on the list. Car 18, Mark Winterbottom and Michael Caruso, back in the DeWalt colours for this weekend, the black and yellow Camaro. And David Reynolds has Warren Luff alongside him in the Tradie Beer Camaro. So surely that's a podium for Reynolds and Luffy, right?
Well, if history has anything to say or has any bearing on that, because how many is it for Warren Luff now? How many podiums has it been for him at Mount Panorama?
Oh, I think it's 5 or 6.
He had a pretty good ratio there for a while.
They've all been within sort of a 10-year period as well. Like he was almost getting a podium a year, no matter who he co-drove with for a stretch of time at WAU with James Courtney and Scott Pye and then there were some others in there along the way as well.
He had a pretty good run with Lounsey, Triple Eight.
That's right.
And then Garth Tander at Walkinshaws. And then it was Scott Pye.
Yeah.
We know our stats.
Eventually.
I mean, David Reynolds would be good for him to get another one. Obviously, he won that one with the Erebus a few years ago, missed out just for FPR a few years ago. I don't know if the 20 cars, I don't know if these cars are going to be as strong as some of the other ones we've mentioned already. I mean, last year there was the fuel debacle. I I'm sure they've definitely learnt their lesson from that one because I'm sure there was
Well,
some they sacked people over it. I'm pretty
yeah,
sure from memory.
yeah, heads rolled after that. That was proper nasty, and that was not a fun garage to go to post race. Let me give you a strong tip. But
Are you talking from experience, mate?
yes, I am. Yeah,
I
the
went in
soul
there
had
with
been.
him from. I went in there with him for moral support.
Yeah, that was not fun. But in saying that, Dave Reynolds was quick there at the start of the year. You could argue that was probably the best. That's probably the best performance he's had all year, and it's sort of fallen away a little bit from Team 18. And of course, now there's rumours going around that they're jumping to Toyota in 2026. So yeah, I don't.
How old's Warren Luff now?
Oh, that's a question without notice. Getting
I mean,
on.
that's my only thing. Like, if not saying he's bad, but he's been around a bit and hasn't been driving full time. Has he been driving anything this year?
Yeah, he drives stunt cars at Movie World.
I mean, other than entertaining the kids because there's no Scooby Doo coaster.
No.
He doesn't do his stuff at Movie World anymore.
Oh, doesn't he?
No, I found out that he's since moved on from that.
Yeah, right. Well, there we go.
I'm very disappointed.
But I think the number 18, Michael Caruso is a good set of hands. He'd been driving for a very long time, was never really got to go in top machinery. But I think of Michael Caruso a little bit like Lee Holdsworth. They had very similar career trajectories, and
given they were teammates, makes sense.
Yeah, for a long time as well. Yeah, that's probably why I associate them together for so much. But I just don't think they've had that. Like, they just haven't seemed as flashy as some of the other, like Erebus, for example. Erebus, they've had flashes, and you go, yeah, the speed's there. But Team 18 have kind of meandered around where they're at, I feel. And I could be well, it's just a feeling. I don't have any stats to back that at the moment. That's just the vibe I get.
No, I'm with you. They're sort of, I reckon they're almost in that sort of BJR B team and that Blanchard Racing of sort of they're there.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Like they're just sort of meh.
Has Frosty won a race this year?
2 podiums.
Yeah.
Two podiums, and in saying that, his 2 podiums have come from the only 2 times where he's had good qualifying speed.
Yeah.
And I mean, Tasmania was another place where they had good speed, but it just never eventuated into anything sort of brilliant. And
they got caught up in some stuff as well. David Reynolds got caught up at Tassie as well. So, I mean, look, I think the results haven't been there, but I guess I should roll back a little bit what I said. There has been speed.
Yeah, and obviously there's enough there to warrant Anton De Pasquale wanting to go there from Dick Johnson Racing for next year. So whether that is Toyota, whether there's something going on behind the scenes there, of course, that's come at the expense of Mark Winterbottom in controversial circumstances, I think it's safe to say. Perhaps Frosty's going to have the fire lit under him as well to prove that he still belongs on the grid as a full-timer because it is what he wants to do. And rumour mill keeps on linking him to Brad Jones Racing.
Yeah, bring him to Aubrey. We'll have him.
Of course you will. Of course you will. All right, let's move on from Team 18. Let's go to perhaps we're going to start going into some favourites for the race here because next up is Premier Racing. Car 23, Tim Slade, who's recently announced his full-time retirement. He's alongside Cameron McLeod, who, much like Cooper Murray, is stepping away from Super 2 this weekend to focus primarily on his Bathurst 1000 campaign. And this one's going to be one we're going to talk about a lot, I think, boys. Car 31, James Golding, David Russell, third at the Sandown 500. Premier, a team on the rise, and this would be another pretty impressive chapter to add to that rise if they can jag a strong result this weekend.
Yeah, they were massive in Sandown, and I found it a little bit hard to believe that was their first podium as a team. They'd been so strong throughout the year. I'm pretty sure I remember James Golding he was on the front row at Bathurst earlier on in the year too.
He took pole in Darwin.
He took pole in Darwin as well. Yeah, that's a fair call. So, like, I think it just surprised me when that stat came out. Oh, it was their first podium of the year, because they've just been there and they've just seemed to have it. And James Golding has seemed to have it. And David Russell's been a very strong co-driver, and he's probably been one of my favourite underdog co-drivers for the last few years because no one really expects him. Now they do. Obviously, he had a few good years at Erebus, but that's a team to watch. The Tim Slade, Cameron McLeod car, I don't really rate, but the 31 I definitely do.
And James Golding, 6th in the championship. I mean, he's had a very, very impressive season. That's sort of gone a little bit under the radar, and he's not a million miles behind Matt Payne in 5th either. So, a strong result at Bathurst, and he could keep climbing up the championship leaderboard and continue this breakout year for both himself and Premier Racing.
Well, he's the top Camaro driver outside of Triple Eight.
Yeah, that's exactly right. He has had a truly outstanding season, and justified Pete Juber's decision to drag him out from the Supercars exile midway through 2022. As much as it was controversial at the time to kick out Gary Jacobson partway through the season, turns out Pete Juber knew what he was doing in bringing in James Golding.
Yeah, absolutely. And further to your point, Josh, about David Russell and the years he's had at Erebus, the last 3 enduro events he's podiumed at, dating back to Bathurst in 2022. So, yes, Zach, 4.
Make that 4. Bathurst 2021, he podiumed with Brody Kostecki as well.
He did too. That's right.
Bathurst 22, I think, was a 4 from memory.
Right. Okay. So 3 of the last 4 enduros. We'll take
the 4th one was a 4th, so it's much of a
basically all
really.
there. So it's a strong pair, a strong set of hands, and for him to team up with Jimmy Golding this weekend coming, it'll be a nice strong pairing.
The modern Warren Luff.
Well, stats proving it.
Well, he drives in Porsche Carrera Cup, so I mean, the links are there. And the only reason I didn't list Golding and Russell as my dark horse pick, it's because I think they're a genuine favourite.
Yeah, okay.
I think they're a genuine contender for this race, which is incredible to say. They've got pace at Bathurst. James Golding and Premier, they've proven it over the past few years. The provisional 2nd in qualifying last year. Then put it 4th in the shootout, on the front row again this year at the Bathurst 500. And they've only been getting better and better as the year's gone on. And David Russell sort of got that golden touch of everything he does at Bathurst is sort of turning to magic a little bit as of recent seasons. So I genuinely think they're one of the genuine contenders for the race. I'm not saying they're the outright favourite, but I'm saying they're a very, very good shot. Very good shot, I think.
They were my Smokey. Them and Kostecki. But yeah, actually, to be fair, Zach, you're probably right. They are one of the top contenders. Anything, if they didn't get on, the podium is the goal. Winning the race and the podium is a goal for this team. And I think anything less than that will be a little bit disappointing if they don't come home with a trophy.
No, for sure. And I think they're definitely the leading car from Premier, I think. In saying that, I also think the move to allow Cam McLeod to focus 100% on his Bathurst 1000 duties this weekend, another good move, because we saw it's a little bit ragged at Sandown, I think, and that's both across Super 2 and in the Supercars race itself at Sandown. So it'll be good for Cam just to tune in, dial himself in 100% to the Gen 3 car at Bathurst. And, Tim Slade's a more than solid driver as well. So if that car's right, then they can feature up towards the top 10 as well, which would be a bit of a red letter day for Premier Racing in their white and red Nulon Camaros. But another team we should talk about who could also be a bit of a smoky, Matt Stone Racing. Car 10, Bendix Camaro, Nick Percat, Dylan O'Keefe. And number 4, the SP Tool cars, and it is the twin Cam, Cam Hill and Cameron Crick. Again, very speedy at the start of the year at the Bathurst 500, and again, another team that's sort of kept on rising throughout the season. Again, Triple Eight Camaro, much like Premier Racing, a customer Triple Eight Camaro. All the ingredients are there, aren't they?
They've had a strong year too. I mean, I don't think the team's point standing quite shows how good of a season they've had. I mean, Nick Percat what's that, 2 race wins this season for Nick Percat, having a great year. Cameron Hill kind of held his own. He's been involved in a couple of incidents, friend of the show, Cameron Hill, throughout the year, which probably has not showcased the good season he's had. But that Nick Percat car with Dylan O'Keefe, it could be one to watch.
I've also got it on my list as a Smoky. As an outsider for a podium, I think if they can get all the ducks in a row and everything and the stars aligned, they've shown all year they've got car pace. I have no doubt that Nick can put this car into the shootout and up towards the front of the grid, and hopefully for them get up the front and try and score max points. But also some news on the Nick Percat front. There's going to be a team mascot introduced into the Matt Stone Racing Garage for this weekend, NRL spec.
Yes.
Nelson.
Yes, Nick Percat's much beloved dog Nelson has sort of been humanized, I guess we can say. And he's been given a lovely Bendix race suit as well.
Fantastic.
So might get very confusing if Nelson does make an appearance at the track. Nelson the dog, not Nelson the big fluffy
mascot.
Yes.
Look, I think if both Matt Stone Racing cars are outside the top 10 at the end of the day, it's a bad day.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
And I'm also going to say I reckon both of those cars could make the top 10 shootout as well. Cam Hill, let's not forget, Cam Hill qualified 4th at the opening race of the season, finished 5th. So
it's only his second full-time season, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and he's on the up and up. I think he's been sort of around 15th, 16th for a long time. He was sort of intertwined with Brian Wood, sort of on an island of his own, just outside of the big midfield scrap, sort of 7th on back to about 14th. But after, I think, what was it, an 8th place finish, I think it was, 8th, 9th at Sandown, with the rear bar hanging off it, and after Cam Crick spun the car under safety car, and just a wild day for them that somehow ended in a good result. That's put him up in that midfield fight now. So if he gets a strong result at Bathurst, then he could suddenly find himself vaulted up towards the top 10 in the championship, which would be hugely impressive for a second-year driver.
He's only less than 100 points outside the top 10. Di Pasquale in 10th at the moment on 13.39, and Cameron Hill 14th on 12.52. So,
yeah, and 300 points on the line for a win. Not saying Cam Hill and Cam Crick are going to win the Bathurst 1000, but stranger things have happened on the mountain before, and we've seen that Matt Stone Racing can put together a quick car, and I mean Cam's keeping Nick very honest in qualifying head-to-head as well. So, yeah, team to watch.
Absolutely,
for sure.
they are
100%.
Another team to watch, another Queensland team, another Gold Coast team, Dick Johnson Racing. Had a bit of a funny season, Dick Johnson Racing, very hot and cold. Car 11, Antoine De Pasquale, Tony D'Alberto, finished on the podium at Bathurst last year with a 3rd place, best of the Mustangs. And car 17 is Will Davison and Kai Allen, current Super 2 series leader, going trying to etch a name in history as the first ever back-to-back winner of the Super 2 series, which would be an incredible feat. And he is completing his Super 2 duties as well with Eggleston Motorsport. What's your read on Dick Johnson Racing? Can you read Dick Johnson Racing? Are they going to be hot? Are they going to be cold? Are they going to be somewhere in the middle? It's been very hard to tell this season, hasn't it?
I think judging Perry's performance at the AFL Grand Final was a little bit easier than judging their performance this year at DGR. You've talked about hot and cold. Look, I don't know where to put my finger on this team and where they're at. They're supposed to be, well, they definitely are the homologation team for Ford. So therefore, they're the factory Ford team. And I think they're the 3rd or the 4th best Ford team going. So I don't know. I don't have a lot of nice things to say about DGR's form this year. They've had some great one-off performances, like Di Pasquale's been on the podium a couple of times this year. He's obviously leaving to Team 18, and Will Davison's sticking around. It's going to be a strong driver lineup next year. Like, the ingredients seem to be there. They've got now the Ford factory engine deal as well in-house. I just don't understand what's going on. I mean, I know we don't expect them to be the Penske of old, but they are the Ford factory team, and they're just so meh.
They've always been relatively, especially in recent times, they've always done well at Bathurst, no matter how the rest of their year was going. And I think we'll probably see that again this year. It's a lot easier to try and rebolt in a setup on these Gen 3 cars that worked last year for them. They're up there and thereabouts. So, I think they'll be aiming towards the top fives for both cars. And if they're outside the top 10, then they've probably had a rough day.
Yeah, I just don't know what DJR is going to turn up. And really, until we know which DJR is going to turn up on Thursday, then it's hard to sort of judge what a good result for them is going to be. Like,
they could win the race, or they could come dead last and write both their cars off.
Yeah, it's just been a funny year for Dick Johnson Racing, and I just don't know where they're going to be. Like, even Sandown, like Anton De Pasquale puts the thing third in the shootout, despite the fact he was the first one out, and nearly spins the thing on his outlap. But then he plummeted from 3rd to 14th in the race. Like, the car just had zero race pace, and Will Davison and Kai Allen were sort of anonymous all weekend as well. So, and like, this is Kai Allen, who's quite possibly the most highly touted rookie in what we've maybe ever had in supercars, given his Super 2 record. So
he's supercars Oscar Piastri.
Yeah, he very much is. So yeah, I just don't know with Dick Johnson Racing. I mean, this isn't me sitting on the fence or anything. This is just me genuinely unsure as to what to expect from Dick Johnson Racing.
Yeah, I mean, we've been pretty scathing on their season so far, I feel. It's just not in their character to have this season. But then again, before Penske came along, this was Dick Johnson Racing. So, yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, you mentioned Penske, and I have been rewatching the 2019 Bathurst 1000 to get myself into the mood for Bathurst. Yeah, need I say more? I'm not saying Dick Johnson Racing are gonna pull out those sorts of measures again this year. But yeah, I just don't know with Dick Johnson Racing. Like, last year was sort of anonymous for them, yet next thing you know, Anton De Pasquale and Tony D'Alberto are up there lifting trophies and spraying champagne at the end of the day. So yeah, just don't know. You just don't know with Dick Johnson Racing, and
it's sad. Like,
it is sad, and it sort of shows how amazing Penske are as a racing organisation. Like, yes, sure, there's budget that goes with it, and et cetera, but at the end of the day, Roger Penske's a serial winner in motor racing, and his success over decades and decades, over numerous different disciplines and series, it just proves how much of, I guess, a racing legend and a racing genius Roger Penske is, and sort of the people he hires along the way.
What's also disappointing is Shell V-Power Racing would arguably the only manufactured factory team in supercars, right? They're the only one with factory. They're the homologation team of the only manufacturer that has manufacturer dollars involved in the sport. Obviously, GM is a supercars IP, for those who don't know. And they're 5th in the championship.
And 4th best of the Ford teams.
And they're the 4th best Ford team.
So yeah, I do get your point, and I guess you are the one out of the three of us who does like to say it how it is, more than Anthony and I, which we do appreciate, by the way. But yeah, I'll get back to you on Sunday night once 1,000 kilometers have been run, and I'll let you know what I think of Dick Johnson Racing, because I just don't know. I really don't. Let's move on to one of the 4 teams that's currently beating Dick Johnson Racing, and it is Grove Racing, who were behind the DJR before the Sandown 500, but despite the fact only one of their cars finished, they jumped ahead. And that car that finished was Matt Payne and Garth Tander, who finished 4th at the Sandown 500. We're only half a second away from a podium. And car number 26 is the other Penrite Mustang of Richie Stanaway, reigning Bathurst 1000 winner, and Dale Wood, a long-time front-runner in Porsche Carrera Cup circles. Again, two very good combinations here, boys, particularly Matt Payne and Garth Tander. Anytime you can be paired with a 5-time Bathurst 1000 winner, you're doing all right as a primary driver, I think.
Well, it could be a 6-time champion after this weekend too.
We've seen the pace that Matt Payne has had at the mountain in years gone by, and especially last year, considering him and Kevin Estre, the Frenchman, paired together, and they had a bit of an off at turn 1 on lap 27, and with Lucky Dog managed to fight their way back and finish just outside the top 10, I think. And that really kick-started a very strong back end of the year for Matt Payne. So I think he'll be looking to try and do the same again, and not a bad set of hands to pass it over to when you jump out of the car after the first stint in Garth Tander.
100% for sure. And look, the Richie Stanaway car, like after Sandown, he's 18th in the championship. I don't think that's reflected the season he's had. Obviously, the engine failure at Sandown kind of really started this storyline of whether the Ford engines were up to scratch, and the crankshaft issue kind of came to part, especially on the media ride day the next day. But Richie Stanaway was and Dale Wood running in the top 10, solidly in the top 10 before that engine failure. So I think both of these cars, look, if both of these cars end up in the top 10 shootout, would not surprise me.
Yeah, and Richie said it at the Bathurst 1000 launch on Sydney Harbour last Monday, I believe it was, that, you know, Bathurst is the place where he has the most experience in a supercar alongside Sandown. So a lot of this season has been sort of refamiliarisation with a lot of the, I guess, the more obscure tracks on the Australian calendar. And that sort of hasn't really allowed him to put his best foot forward this season. And again, Grove Racing have let him go. Kai Allen's coming in next year. Richie's looking for a drive at the moment, although it whispers that, to be believed, he's got one for next year, and a very exciting one at that. But yeah, look, I definitely think they can both be in the frame for sure. Payne and Tander probably more so than Stanaway and Wood, and that's no slide on Richie and Dale. It's just, you know, it's
That's
Garth
what
Tander.
it is.
It's Garth Tander. Like, there aren't a lot of guys who are better at Mount Panorama than Garth Tander. If you win 5 races, you're sort of one of the all-time legends of Mount Panorama. So, yeah, and Garth's very complimentary of Matt Payne as well. He's saying that Matt can do things in a supercar that Garth couldn't do when he was Matt's age. So, and, you know, Garth Tander turned out to be a fairly decent touring car driver. So, I definitely think Payne and Tander's one to watch.
We also can't forget Richie Stanaway is the reigning Bathurst 1000 winner. And with that as well, this week there'll be a lot of press regarding that. So it'll be interesting to see how he and the team manages that, of course, because it'll just be him having to do it all.
Yeah, no Shane Van Gisbergen.
No SVG to do it all. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see how he copes with that. But I've worked with him a bit. I worked with him a bit at Sandown doing some content stuff, and he's the ultimate professional. And yeah, all the best to those guys. And for Richie's sake, I hope he's able to close out a deal for next year with a solid performance.
You didn't happen to go near his engine at any point, did you?
No, we just walked the track.
Okay, good. We just had to clear that up on the record.
No, no tampering for me.
No, okay, good. Yeah, no, Grove Racing, and again, they've got a lot of good people behind the scenes as well. They've got Dave Couchy as team principal, Grant McPherson's there. Both of them have been involved in Bathurst winning campaigns in the past. So, yeah, I think another team to watch for sure. And they were strong last year too. David Reynolds and Garth Tander, they combined fairly well in that Mustang for Grove Racing back then. I think it was a 5th place finish for them and 3rd of the Mustangs home. So
it's an exciting team, Grove Racing, at the moment.
Yeah, definitely an exciting team and one to watch for years to come, I think. Another exciting team, Walkinshaw Andretti United. Talk of the town in the past few weeks in supercars since Sandown, and they could very well be the talk of Bathurst Town at the end of the Bathurst 1000 weekend, because pairing up in the 25 Optus Mustang is Chaz Mostert and Lee Holdsworth, 2021 Bathurst 1000 champions with a dominant performance in a ZB Commodore. And Ryan Wood, young Kiwi, is alongside the experienced Kiwi, Fabian Coulthard, in the Truck Assist Mustang car number 2. What's going on for WAU since we last saw them at Sandown? I guess my big question is, how do we think the Toyota news is going to impact them this weekend? Because there's going to be a lot of press surrounding the Toyota. It's getting unveiled on the Friday at the circuit. You'd imagine WAU will be involved in some way, shape or form with that unveiling in pit lane. Yeah, it's going to be a pretty busy weekend for WAU, I think.
I 100% agree. And the three of us are all media guys. And we don't normally say this often, but I think one of the most important departments of Walkinshaw and Andretti United this weekend will be their marketing team. As their marketing team, if they're organised and they can keep all the noise away from the internal team, whoever their marketing and comms team is, I think that's going to be key. And making sure it's planned and rigid and not the whole, oh crap, I have to do it like Ryan Walkinshaw or one of the or Brett Stewart doesn't have to be dragged away to do an interview about Toyota that he didn't know about, and all those sorts of things. I think that that background stuff I think will play really will play into it. I think for sure.
Absolutely. To counter that point, the drivers are both really excited as to what that prospect is going to look like. So I think that whilst there will be probably a bit of press on Friday that happens in and around the announcement and the unveiling of the 1-to-1 clay model that will happen at the track. Apart from that, I then think it'll be business as usual for those guys and the drivers themselves to just head down, bum up and get into it. We've seen in previous years, Chaz and Lee won the thing in 2021. They've got pace. They're a great combination together. I have them inside my top 5 for the weekend and a potential race winner.
I don't have too many concerns about how Chaz is going to handle the Toyota stuff. He's been around the game long enough now. He knows what to do. He's already made a pretty high profile defection from Tickford to WAU back when it was a Ford to Holden transition in 2019 to 2020. So he knows what the deal is. He's always been good with media. But for Ryan Wood, let's not forget, this is his Bathurst 1000 debut as well. And he's also got to deal with this added pressure of the unveiling of the world's biggest car manufacturer coming to supercars, and he's going to be driving one of them in 2026. Again, he's very, very fortunate to have very, very experienced drivers not only driving alongside him in Fabian Coulthard, but also sharing a garage with him in Chaz Mostert and Lee Holdsworth. And a very, very experienced team around him as well, who have been in the game a long time. But very interested to see how Ryan goes in his Bathurst 1000 debut, because let's not forget, he for a moment was in the top 10 shootout on debut in February before his time got taken away after a yellow flag infringement. We know Ryan's got a lot of pace, but can he convert it across 161 laps with Fabian?
That is the question. I'm with you 100% on Chaz having no issues, and with you, Anthony, that I think if he doesn't get a trophy on the weekend, it's a bad day. But yeah, Ryan Wood, I mean, I've had some interesting things to say about Ryan Wood. Obviously, he had that incident in the Super 2 last year at Sandown, which questionably wasn't his fault. He's quick, for sure. But he's got his head screwed on. He seems like a nice, level-headed young fella. So it'll be a test how all the noise goes. But he's quick. I mean, if they get in the top 10, I think they've had a good day and the car's straight. But I don't think it's definitely not on the level of his teammate Chaz.
No, time will tell as to how it'll all unfold for those guys.
100%. And I think we're all in agreement. Chaz and Lee, they're among the favourites. That's pretty cut and dry, isn't it, given their 2021 performance? And Lee's going to be out with a point to prove after his pretty uncharacteristic error at Sandown, I think it's safe to say.
Yes, 100%. I don't think anyone expected that from Lee Holdsworth. I don't even think Lee Holdsworth expected that. But yeah, they kind of took themselves out of contention with that one. They had a quick car, and just a little bit of lapse of judgment really changed the course of their race. And and it affected the form that Chaz Mostert was in his closing the gap of the championship too. So hopefully that doesn't come to bite Chaz later on in the year.
No, 189 points back is Chaz Mostert, and sort of edging on sort of needs a win to stay alive kind of territory, especially when the guy he's chasing is Will Brown, who has built a season on consistency and almost relentless consistency, I guess you can say. So that's going to be one to watch for sure, the championship battle at Mount Panorama. Only 2 teams to go in our Bathurst 1000 preview. Tickford next on the list, an interesting mix of youth and experience across their 2 Mustangs. Car 6, Cam Waters and James Moffat, Monster Energy Mustang. Cam has been, for a long time, one of the fastest drivers at the mountain, but still hasn't been able to break through for his maiden Bathurst 1000 win. And in the Castrol Mustang, Thomas Randall and Tyler Everingham making up a youthful combination in that number 55 Mustang. Boys, is this the weekend Cam Waters finally breaks his Bathurst duck?
I sure hope so. I really, really hope so. I mean, last year was looking okay until James Moffat popped it in the wall at the top of the mountain, and I'm sure James Moffat has learned his lessons from that. And they've been quick all year. I mean, other than a slow start to the season, they really should have been in championship contention this year, Cam Waters, but obviously a slow start and a few issues here and there at Tickford, stunted that championship, I guess, challenge before it even begun, really, unfortunately. So I hope that it is as a Ford fan, that it is Cam Waters' year. But the 55 car is probably a little bit different. I mean, after Tassie, they've kind of gotten, I guess Randall's kind of gotten a little bit of a reputation of potentially being a bit of a choker. He's got speed, but yeah, has not had a good run in recent times. But the Tickford cars are fast. I definitely, if Waters doesn't get on the podium, bad day. I think Randall top 10. If he's not in the top 10, terrible day. Both those cars are looking pretty good because I mean they're the second. They're sitting second in the teams championship, so they obviously they know what they're doing.
And let's not forget, this is a Tickford that is a lean, mean 2-car machine this year. 2 less cars to worry about in the lead in and all the pre-briefs and the data meetings and et cetera, et cetera. That's got to help, right? Surely the Cam Waters, James Moffat case in particular.
I agree 100%. I mean, we talked about it last year when they announced that they were going down to 2 cars, that 2 good cars is better than 1 really good car, 1.5 pretty good cars, and 1.5 average cars. So, yeah, I think they've kept their best personnel that are concentrating on the top team in the top 2 cars, which is the 6 Monster car and the 55 Castrol car, and I think they'll be strong.
I've seen about it. I've had the glimpses of pace and performance, basically since Townsville onwards, especially on the car 6 side of the garage. So they'll be out to have a good weekend, and for that Monster Energy Falcon, Mustang rather, bounce back and redeem themselves from last year.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely a team to watch. And the team that everyone's chasing, and everyone has been chasing since the Bathurst 500 start season, Red Bull Ampol Racing 888. Car 87, Will Brown, Scott Pye. Will Brown, current championship leader. Car 88, Brock Feeney and Jamie Whincup. 3rd in the championship for Brock, 222 points behind his teammate, Will Brown, I should say. This season's kind of been the reverse of what everyone was expecting. Brock was the favourite. And Will has come in and almost made the team his own. I think it's safe to say in his first 3 quarters of a season with 888 Race Engineering. But in saying that, the inter-team rivalries got a little bit tense on track from time to time. And I tell you what, I think the higher-ups at 888 would they definitely would not want it to boil over on the sport's biggest stage, would they?
Nah, both these cars are crap, mate. If they make the top 20, it'd be a good day. No, but for all seriousness, it could come to a head. We've seen them close. We know Feeney's probably not too stoked to be playing second fiddle to Brown at the moment, especially when he was competitive against a disgruntled Shane Van Gisbergen last year. If that's probably the right way to put it, he probably, there was a lot of stocks on Feeney going on to this year, and Will Brown, obviously, he was out matched by his teammate Brody Kostecki at Erebus last year. So I don't think people expected the Will Brown consistency, and I would argue it's been dominant to a point. I think he's had more dominant drives than Feeney has. Feeney, I think on paper, has got more race wins. He won a lot of sprint races earlier on in the season when he had, a good car, where the points for those individual race wins weren't as important. But Will Brown's been able to make the bad days okay. And I think that is the difference this season. And I think that 87 and the 88, I think both cars, both of those AAA cars, they're going to be hard to beat.
They're going to be hard to beat, and I wouldn't be surprised if we saw them lock out a 1-2 podium across the weekend. The stars would have to align for that to happen, but they've both shown over the year that on their day, either one of them can win it, and they're going to be allowed to race. Or will they? I guess we'll have to wait and see if the race comes down to being that close. But it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. But it should be a ding-dong battle that'll be one for the ages.
Well,
sorry, Zach.
Well, at the risk of sounding as cynical as you do, Josh, the man who calls the shots is driving one of the cars.
Yes, I was going to say the same thing. Jamie Winkup's in the 88. I think he's a stronger co-driver than Scott Pye. He's got the runs on the board. Scott Pye was obviously in a bit of machinery more recently than Jamie, but I think they'll be allowed to race depending who's in front.
Okay, so we've established that we think the Red Bulls are the one to beat.
Yes.
So who do we think is the better Red Bull? Who do we think is the favourite for the Bathurst 1000? And it can be outside Red Bull if you don't think it's going to be a Red Bull victory.
My heart tells me Chaz, but my brain tells me Will Brown.
Okay, so Josh is locking in Will Brown and Scott Pye to sweep the Enduros for season 2020-24. That would be very handy in Will Brown's championship case. Extremely handy.
And I'm going to play devil's advocate and jump the other side of the garage and go Brock Feeney and Jamie Winkup, purely because I think Jamie is the consummate professional. He's a 7-time Supercars champion. He's got the runs on the board. He's a 4-time Bathurst winner. What more do I need to add? I think he and Brock, especially last year, they wanted with a shot to win and had the same gear lever issues that the 888 car did. So they'll be looking to bounce back. And I think Jamie, being the stronger of the two co-drivers that they've got, is what's going to help that cause through the middle of the race.
I'm with you, Anthony. I also think Brock Feeney and Jamie Winkup are the favourites for this race. Partially because, as you said, heartbreak last year with the gear lever falling off with, what was it? I think it was 20 laps to go when they were in a really strong position. Also, Brock Feeney, he's 222 points off of Will Brown in the championship. And if it's nearing win or bust for Chaz Mossett's championship case, then I think it's definitely win or bust for Brock Feeney's championship this weekend at Bathurst. Because as soon as you fall outside of a round's worth of points in supercars, it's so hard to make it back up, and especially when there's only 2 left in the season. And also, Jamie Winkup, yes, he's a 4-time Bathurst winner, but the last time he won it was 2012. Yeah, it's been a long time since Jamie Winkup's won a Bathurst 1000, and for a man as successful as Jamie Winkup has been in V8 supercar competition, I don't think that's going to sit well with him if he ends his career with 4 Bathurst wins and not having won one in over a decade.
You let a few go to the keeper, though, to be fair.
Well, I mean, you can say that he won in 2016 because he did on road. I mean, he won the Bathurst 498.5 in.
That was the issue.
I mean, he won the Bathurst 498.5 in 2014. He passed everyone, including the safety car in 2015, which didn't help him. But yeah, I just feel like it's due, I think, for Jamie in particular, but also I can sort of feel Will sort of playing a half conservative game, given he has that championship buffer.
Yeah.
But in saying that, Will Brown is a racer's racer. And if there's a Bathurst 1000 win right there for the taking, Will Brown's probably going to go for it, right?
Yeah.
So I reckon it's going to be a fascinating race. I really can't wait for it.
And I think Scott Pye needs to stick a middle finger up to someone, is my understanding. Wants to get in the...
I feel like Scott Pye feels like he's going to have a point to try and prove, and potentially he may overdrive the car and then put it in the fence. That's my gut feeling. I think he's going to try and drive to potentially stick his hand up if he's a late contender for the Premier seat. I know it was rumoured to go there early, and it now sounds like Richie's all but a done deal, but Scott's not going to dive under it. Try and drive the socks off it to try and help Will Brown, but conversely, that then could cause errors. Who knows? That's just my gut feeling.
Given my connections, shall we say, I'm going to let that one go through to the keeper. Thank you. Yes, thank you, Josh. Chuck the gloves on, mate. Right, before we go, it wouldn't be a Pitlane Punters Supercars round preview without our own predictions, which good luck because it's Bathurst. So if anyone gets 3 out of 3, then you probably deserve a cold one at some point. Yes, Josh, you're probably going to get 3 out of 3 knowing you, with your tin-ass luck. Yes, we'll let you giggle away. You can kick us off, given that it's only fair that our leader rolls out first.
Righto, my lock prediction. We'll get 1 Mustang on the podium.
Excellent. That's a nice prediction from you. That's probably going to come true. So,
do you want my bold straight away, or?
Well, let me get my fingers typing out so I can lock this all
right.
in. Right. Yes, go, please.
A wild card will be in the top 10.
Yeah, I feel like that's pretty. I don't know. Certain's not the right word.
There's only 2 of them.
Yeah, there are only 2 of them, and I guess there's 500 more Ks for something to go wrong for any car out there. So, yeah, sure, why not? That's.
Are you happy enough with those?
Yeah, I am. I'm just figuring out how to talk and type at the same time. It's been a while since I've done this, as it turns out.
All right. Well, while you do that, we can go through Anthony's. Anthony, yes. What do you reckon?
Josh, I'm with you. I think that the bold prediction for 2 wildcard or a wildcard inside the top 10, I'm happy to allow you that. It's not how I'm going, but my lock prediction to begin with, there'll be 4 periods of either safety car or full course yellow action.
Is that lock or bold?
That's my lock prediction.
Lock it in, Eddie.
Minimum of 4. Not that there will be just 4. I'm saying a minimum of 4.
A minimum of 4. Okay.
Righto, and either safety car or full course yellow.
Which is very hate full course yellow, but that's all right.
I know
it's been changed. It's been changed.
Up if there was 3 safety cars and 1 full course yellow, that you wouldn't give me 4 safety car periods. So I had to add in the full course yellow just to make sure I got there.
Got to be precise with these ones, mate. That's
Absolutely.
That's the aim of the game, to win the Vinny special.
The Vinny special.
What's
my
your bold
prediction? I'm going to list off some bingo numbers. Car 88, car 87, car 25, and car 6. The top 4 in the championship, one of these cars won't finish. I rolled with it at Sandown. It didn't come off, but I have a feeling the mountain is going to bite a little bit harder this year.
So one of the top 4 cars in the Drivers' Championship won't finish the race. That
is my bold prediction.
Okay.
You can take it or leave it.
Well, yeah, no, that's fine. Just a bit easy to explain then. I've got a bingo. I love that. All right.
She should have given us some proper retirement village number intros as well. That would have just topped it right off. Look,
Number 6.
yeah, look, I do like that one. From a purely championship point of view, I kind of wouldn't mind it if it was Will Brown who didn't finish. Tell you what, that'd flip the championship right on its head heading into the Gold Coast and Adelaide, wouldn't it? But I'm going to quickly speed through my predictions, and then we can wrap this one up because it's been a rather big Bathurst preview, but it's the biggest race of the year, so it's only fitting that we do a bit of a longer episode for our biggest event of the year, our grand final, if you will. My lock prediction: Walkman Andretti United will be second in the teams points at the end of the weekend. They're going to jump back ahead of Tickford Racing, I feel. Again, I could be wrong, but hopefully not. And given that Anthony has gone something similar for a lock prediction, I'm feeling like my bold prediction really isn't that bold. But regardless, there's going to be a minimum of 5 safety cars. Yes, safety cars and safety cars only, not full course yellows. Knowing how the full course yellow will be used, if it needs to be used, I feel like we're still going to see a fair bit of safety car activity over full course yellow, and I feel like we could be in for a bit of a physical race, shall we say? There might be some physical racing out there across 161 laps, I'm thinking.
Bring back the Biff.
Yes, bring back the Biff, indeed. Look, I just hope more than anything that we have a truly great race this year, because last year was a little bit so-so, shall we say, and that's probably being polite. But in saying that, back on the hard tyre this year, drivers going to be allowed to push a little bit more. I think this really could be a very, very exciting race. So cannot wait to get there on the mountain. Cannot wait for track action to begin on Thursday afternoon. I cannot wait I just can't wait to get there tomorrow afternoon on Tuesday as we record this. If you do see any of us around, hell, if you know what any of us look like, feel free to come up and say good day at some point. I'm sure that I'll be running around like a headless chook in the back of the paddock somewhere, either the Super 2 paddock or the Supercars paddock. But boys, thank you for joining me, as always. Big Bathurst preview, done and dusted for another year. Cannot wait to see who the mountain chooses for 2024.
Perfect. Thanks, Zach. Looking forward to it.
Can't wait, boys. We'll see you out there.
And we can't wait to, hopefully see you at the Bathurst 1000, or indeed if you're going to be at home watching the Bathurst 1000, wherever you are around the world. Do enjoy the great race. It is a truly great time of the year. But for Joshua Grock, Anthony Lewsom, I have been Zach Dowdle. Enjoy your Bathurst day on Sunday, and it's goodbye for now.
You've been listening to the Pitlane Punters podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, follow, and ring the notification bell wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get a spare chance, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps us in the algorithm. And now, exclusive to Spotify listeners, we've unlocked the Q&A function. So you have a question about the podcast, how we make it, or just have any motorsport questions in general, we'd love to hear from you, we'd love to answer them, and we'd love to engage with you. That's it from us. See you next time on the Pitlane Punters podcast.